much possible here in Tulsa. Back in 2016. A big this part of why I came from San Francisco to join all of you here was all the good things I was so much possible here in Tulsa. Really revitalized a big part of why I came from San Francisco to join all of you here was all the good things I was hearing about the Kaiser Foundation, how they really revitalized. So thank you for your hospitality, just on a personal level. The city, and it's such a pleasure to now count myself among you as a Tulsan, if I'm allowed to call myself that. Something that I think is quite unique and special. Just on a personal level of 100,000 items, give or take, all dedicated to put together something that I think is quite unique and special. This is an archive of 100,000 items, give or take. This is another to the life and work of Bob Dylan. It's rare to have a center to be chasing after Dylan, dedicated to a living artist, listeners. This is another important aspect that makes this so unique. We will continue to be chasing after Dylan, as we always have, as fans, as alone in American music and culture, curators, in whatever capacity we approach. We now have this extraordinary man who, I think it's safe to say, has stood alone in American music and culture so much more synergy and dynamism. The fact that we now have this collection to showcase a lovely array of speakers today. I just want to say one thing beforehand, because I know a lot of you will be coming into the center for the first time. A lovely array of speakers today. I just want to say one thing beforehand, because I know a lot of you will be coming into the center for the first time. And I encourage you to do the following. While there is no one way to experience the Bob Dylan Center, just as there is no one way to interpret or appreciate or fall in love with or argue with or debate Dylan and his music, we want you to feel that this is an open-ended experience. You, the visitors, are so much a part of this. You help make meaning from the work inside the center. So I encourage you to use our interactive elements. We want this to be very participatory, and I hope you find that there are surprises here and delights as you go through the exhibitions, thinking about Bob Dylan and appreciating his work, but also tapping into your own creative potential. After all, I believe, as far back as human history goes, it's been endemic in us to want to express, to want to share. We have stories to tell, we have images to create, and if you feel increasingly ennobled by your experience with the Dylan Archive and the Dylan Center to share your own self-expression, all the better. So here's to storytelling, to unfettered creativity, to independent thinking, to all the things that Bob Dylan continues to stand for. I welcome you into the experience, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. Yes. I mentioned the George Kaiser Family Foundation earlier, and I'm very pleased to thank everyone associated with the foundation, and in particular, our first speaker today, Executive Director of the Family Foundation, Ken Levit.
Wow, this is a great crowd. I haven't felt this energetic and enthusiastic since the Patti Smith concert at Cain's, which was amazing. All right, in the presence of a poet laureate, Joy Harjo, and in the shadow of a Nobel laureate, I think it's best to be a person of very few words. A song I've always liked is It's All Right, Ma. And there's a line there that has always tantalized me. He not busy being born is busy dying. For me, it represents the need to grow, to explore, to learn, to begin anew, to never rest. So too, Tulsa is never at rest. We learn, we improve, we seek justice, we chase new frontiers. The Bob Dylan Center builds on what went before. The Woody Guthrie Center, Philbrook, Gilcrease, Cain's, the musicians and artists that have come here and drawn inspiration from this community. And it's our dream, your dream, our dream, for this to be a beacon for generations to come, who will write their poems in Tulsa, play their instruments here, and add to this great story. The next Wayman Tisdale, S.E. Hinton, Leon Russell, and so many more. As for George Kaiser Family Foundation, thank you for this recognition and appreciation. Yes, our team worked hard on this. Stanton Doyle, Jeff Stava, and many others. Our board and George supported this from the outset, and we had many, many partners in this community who joined with us enthusiastically. I could not be more proud of the team that has been charged to bring this project to life, running the Guthrie Center, the American Song Archives, and now the Bob Dylan Center. Jessa McKenzie, Jordan Cerrugi, Steve Higgins, Steve Jenkins, Mark Davidson, the entire team. What a job you've all done over this weekend. I love that. Let's applaud them. It's been amazing. Across this last week, I've had conversations and helped tour people around this community from folks from Spain, Italy, England, France, New Zealand, who've all come for the opening of the center and vowed to return again and again. American Airlines, if you're listening, it's time for more direct flights. Last, a thank you again to all the people and partners who made this possible, the donors who are listed on your program, who contributed enthusiastically and with full heart, the architects at Olson Kundig and Lilly Design, Lilly Architects, Creo, 59 Productions, Crossland, all the security that has been on site here these last week, around the clock, Nikki and your colleagues. All of you have embraced the idea. The citizens of Tulsa and all of those partners have embraced the idea of Bob Dylan in Tulsa, which is kind of an unconventional idea. It's a creative concept to embrace, and we appreciate it. The Tulsa spirit, the Tulsa sound, the Tulsa story is alive and well and being born each and every day. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ken, and everyone at GKFF. You know, of course, when we talk about the Bob Dylan Center, we talk so much about music and the incredible power of music, what it does for all of us. It provides a soundtrack to our lives. We all have our favorites. I'm sure we all have our Dylan favorites. And to hear one classic Dylan song here today, we wanted to do something very special. Please join me in welcoming performers from Sistema Tulsa doing a very special rendition of Blowin' in the Wind. That was beautiful. Thank you so much to our musicians here. Dare I say, Bob Dylan himself would be very proud. Thank you. You know, a project like this, the Bob Dylan Center, really takes vision and it takes leadership. And we have that right here in Tulsa, of course, at the very top. Please join me in welcoming our very own Honorable G.T. Bynum.
Well, this is a historic day for our city. It's a day that we open a center that will be here into the future to study the life of a restless creator who, if you think in the history of American music, if there's any songwriter who could be self-satisfied and resting on his laurels, it would have to be Bob Dylan. And yet the story of his career is that he never has been. He's always been focused on evolving, on finding new horizons, on growing. And I think for any of us, that is an ideal as people or as a community. I have the great honor on behalf of 400,000 of my neighbors to convey our deep gratitude to the team at the George Kaiser Family Foundation for making this happen. They have created yet another beacon for our community. They've done this, and as Ken said, evolving from the Woody Guthrie Center, combining it with the church studio, Kane's Ballroom, the future Oklahoma Museum of Popular Culture just a couple blocks away. With all of these opening and underway, Tulsa is becoming a center for the study of American music. It is also a focal point not just for America, but for the world. The Dylan Center already, today, before the doors have even opened, has members from 40 states and 13 countries. That includes the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Austria, Sweden, Japan, Libya, the Republic of Singapore, and Israel. In fact, as Ken mentioned, at the VIP preview over the last week, it drew visitors from all over the world, including London, Milan, Paris, and Sao Paulo. Coverage has already appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, the Houston Chronicle, and there's going to be so much more over the next several days. So again, we are deeply grateful to Ken and his team at the George Kaiser Family Foundation for their vision and following through on it. I also want to thank Krystal Reyes. Krystal came to Tulsa from New York as a Dylan scholar. That's what brought her here to our community. Yet today, she works as the Chief Resilience Officer for the city of Tulsa. As we work to become the most welcoming city in America for our immigrant community, as we work to close a century plus of racial disparities in our community, Krystal is the person leading that work for the city of Tulsa. I think her story is such an important reminder that the impact that this center is going to have on our community is about so much more than tourism. It's a beacon. And so today, beginning today, we invite all of Tulsa and all of the world to be inspired by that beacon, to be exhilarated by it, and enlightened by this one-of-a-kind American songwriter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bynum. That was lovely. And the mention of Krystal, who really wanted to be here with us this morning, is feeling a little bit under the weather and thought it would be best to stay home and rest, but I know she's with us here in spirit and support, and we will see her at the center very soon. A big part of the Bob Dylan Center has to do with presenting a plurality of voices. You know, we don't want this to be something where those of us who are fortunate enough to call this our you know, professional home and have jobs here at the center and with the American Song Archives. We want to present our perspectives, but we really are dedicated to bringing in a lot of other folks who can share their thoughts, not only on Dylan, but where we are socially and culturally, what's happening in the world and how we can reflect current events at the center tied into Dylan's long history. We have an artist in residence program through which we will be working with folks from all different disciplines, all different communities. We are extraordinarily honored to kick off the artist in residence program with Tulsa's very own Joy Harjo. How many three-time U.S. Poet Laureates do we have in the audience today? Exactly. This doesn't happen very often, but the fact that Joy just wrapped up her third term as U.S. Poet Laureate suggests not only her extraordinary gifts as a poet, as a writer, as a musician — she plays a mean saxophone if you haven't heard her — but just her stature within American culture, within the Native American community. And it'll be just such a pleasure to see what Joy brings and the joy she brings to the Bob Dylan Center in these coming years. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Joy Harjo.
Henje Stongo. It's good to see everyone out here to celebrate vision and music and life. That's what we're all here to do, is to serve. We're all in service positions to take care of the gifts that we were given. And part of taking care of those gifts, and everyone here brought gifts with them, is to share them. So I see this center as a kind of sharing place. As the speakers before, you know, it's to share Tulsa and the Muskogee Creek Nation nationally, internationally, and here locally. So I'm going to, I started writing this piece called Tangled, about one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs, and Tangled. Every age has its prophets and troubadours, the singers of trouble, love, and the tangled story we humans make as we journey from birth to death, from the earth to the stars and back. Dylan began in the footsteps of Woody Guthrie, then veered to stand and sing his original take on the story of our generation. By 1975, the year the album Blood on the Tracks was released, and the tune Tangled Up in Blue caught the ears of so many, there was more than enough trouble with conflict in Vietnam, the Khmer Rouge massacres, apartheid in South Africa, and the aftermath of Wounded Knee, when 2 FBI agents went down. Anime Piktuakwash, the American Indian Movement warrior, was found dead, shot in the head in a ditch, gone for months. The lyrical, ballad-like poem song of Tangled Up in Blue is a kind of chorus of different lives, each crafted around a transformative moment revealed in the ordinary details out of which our living unwinds. Each story is gathered with the hook phrase, tangled up in blue, which is more than just a catchy set of words for the trick of it. Blue could be the blue light emerging temporarily after twilight to signal the dark. It is the color of the auric field, that which moves between spirit and earthliness. It is a cord that connects to us to history, the history we make within each individual story that connects us with family, a community, a country, an age, a generation. We are tangled up in blue. Dylan often changed the stanzas as he performed and recorded the song through the years, adding and subtracting. I appreciate that kind of form, as the stories are always changing. We change the way we tell them. We experience them differently as we move through time and history. The way I speak or spoke about Dylan or any artist of his age is different now than it was when I was 16 years old and my ears were young. Of his song, Dylan responded, "There's a code in the lyrics, And there's no sense of time, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, all in the same room, and there's very little you can't imagine not happening. End of quote. In other words, these tangled up in blue lyrics make a kind of equation of memory, and memory does not stand still. It is constantly moving within us, through us, with us, without us, so that perhaps we are ultimately creations of time. Perhaps memory has created us. Perhaps it shifts time by an ache of loneliness or a sigh of awe at unbelievable beauty found at closing time in a bar at the edge of nowhere, or in the click of a key in the ignition to say goodbye to goodbye when we've just made love to a miracle. In one memory, I am at Indian school in a navy pea coat, my long dark hair hiding my face. I have a pen in my hand copying Blowing in the Wind, longhand on one of those spiral-bound tablets with green-lined paper. I copy the times they are changing, sing it to myself under the tall cottonwoods on the Indian school campus. It will be years before I find my voice. I will find it in the soundscape of my generation. We listened to the changing times on the radio, carried transistor radios, and listened under the blankets at night to the voices of history and to the singers of love and heartbreak. We played music, danced under light shows, stars, to living music whose resonant sound patterns still cling to the trees, to memory, as we tangled up in blue. We were bent by history, defined by it, even destroyed by it. But like others of my generation, beset by violence and tragedy, we were inspired by Dylan and other singers and players who lifted our spirits, who inspired us to pay attention and keep going through the story that we are making, every one of us. Dylan reminded us in his poem songs that every one of us has a story. Tangled Up in Blue could essentially be a holographic poem song, each verse a fractal of an immense story, a mirror, a memory we left behind in a diner booth. The sky is blue as I listen to Tangled Up in Blue in downtown Tulsa, next door to the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame. I turn up the music. My girlhood is just miles up the road. Blood tails run through our bones like these streets made of the unspeakable. In this moment of history, we are witness to unprecedented and illegal moves to destroy democracy, to erase equality, and undermine human rights based on false premises of sexism, racism, culturalism for greed. In these tangled times, we need the words of the poets, the singers, the prophets, to move in the direction of vision and truth, away from repression and repressive acts that undermine the collective human spirit, to move away from the false stories that support the destruction of Earth, the undermining of female power, which is, in a healthy society, stands hand in hand with male power. Now, the radio I am listening to is digital. I miss the crackle of signal, the scratch of needle on vinyl, but the need for what we find in the music is the same. I bring my restless spirit, disturbed by the blood on the tracks of history, to the altar of music. Love threads through every sung vowel of becoming.
Thank you so much. Joy Harjo, everyone. Just as joy, I think, really centers us in our humanity, brings us back to common threads, as she so cleverly woven them through Dylan's Tangled Up in Blue, I think we need to take a moment to remind ourselves of our present time and place and Tulsa's past and where we are now. We're very aware of the landscape on which we are doing this work, both geographical and emotional. And to help us provide some perspective on this, please join me in welcoming historian and author Hannibal Johnson.
Good morning. This morning we assemble at 116 East Reconciliation Way in the Tulsa Arts District. We are sacred ground adjacent. Just to our east is Tulsa's historic Greenwood District, our original segregated black community home to the famed Black Wall Street. That the Bob Dylan Center occupies this space is both providential and proper. Today we honor a lyricist who chronicled the struggle for racial and social justice, a songwriter extraordinaire who penned key anthems of the civil rights movement, Blowin' in the Wind, 1963, The Times They Are a Changin', 1964, classics covered by black artists like Stevie Wonder and Nina Simone, and calls for racial justice in works like The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll in 1964, George Jackson in 1971, and Hurricane in 1975. Dylan performed his song, Only a Pawn in Their Game, at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. In it, he decried the assassination of Medgar Evers, State Field Secretary for the NAACP, killed in Jackson, Mississippi on June 12, 1963. There's an African proverb about narratives. Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. Dylan gives voice to the lion. Dylan understands our shared humanity, that peace comes when every person is accorded equal dignity and respect. His music perfectly posits this universal imperative. Tulsa offers us a cautionary tale. In his 2020 song, Murder Most Foul, Dylan sings, "Take me back to Tulsa, to the scene of the crime." Opaque for some, but crystal clear for others. Emblematic of American history, Tulsa brings to mind the tragedies and triumphs in hamlets and towns and cities throughout this nation. It's all here, the best of us and the worst of us. In the early 1900s, the Greenwood District teemed with entrepreneurial and economic activity. Professionals like doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, dentists. Commercial establishments like beauty parlors, barbershops, dance halls, pool halls, movie theaters, restaurants, and grocery stores. But Tulsa was a tinderbox, a powder keg, in a nation beset with rampant racial violence and trauma, marked by so-called race riots and the domestic terrorism we call lynching. Powerful industrial and corporate interests coveted black-owned land. White supremacist ideology clashed with the reality of black economic success. The Klan burgeoned. Elements of the media fueled the fire of racial discord. An explosion seemed inevitable. The Tulsa Race Massacre on May 31st and June 1st, 1921 temporarily darkened Black Wall Street. A savage white mob, armed and some deputized, seized upon this segregated enclave, leaving in their wake scorched earth, death, and destruction. But the indomitable human spirit triumphed. Black Tulsans rallied. The Greenwood District rose from the ashes, peaking in the 1940s. Beginning in the 1960s, changed social and economic conditions, integration and urban renewal chief among them, sparked a steep downward spiral. Today, the resurgent Black Wall Street is an integrated, collaborative community consisting of residential, commercial, artistic, educational, cultural, entertainment, and religious elements, looking to reclaim part of the past glory of this hallowed earth. Our work is far from done. Together, we must face our failures. We must face our fears. We must face our future. Today, we celebrate a man who counsels and cajoles us to do just that.
Thank you so much, Hannibal, for reminding us of where we are and why and where we've come from and the distance we still have to travel, and hopefully we'll do that under the guidance of Dylan in a certain way here. We have one more very special musical performance to help us close out. I want to introduce to you Shuj Maggie with his accompanists, Lyle Dieter and Jared Tyler, and they will be performing a very special song in Cherokee, translated by Ryan Mackey. Thank you.
Do I need to turn it up right here? Yeah, I got it. You ready? 3, 2. Gardner stil gåsla hissat ner. Just igår i disse sti, såna i gässan. Juni katte däggna där de skesti. Sia vi gaksteliski di dokna in. Agigotat awadanto agalisis. De lig dit de katla we galoska in. Igu woo nagosti, igu woo nagosti. Lucky oh he sailing. See how we do sestan du duly skate. See how we are segalo his tane. Todo wadak te gisko a wo he you e. Ulo sestana galalad hen a so ye. Agigotat awadanto agalisis. Ude lig di thikatla we galoska. Igu woo nagosti, igu woo nagosti. Lucky oh he sailing. It's an old gay church. Dosti do kilo flagici olig. Ayo nega du don't undo talking no sale. Do the water to gisko awo he you e. So sink a dug nigga west going. Agigotat awadanto agalisis. Ude lig di tikatla we galoska in. Igu woo nagosti, igu woo nagosti. Lucky oh he sailing. Igu woo nagosti, igu woo nagosti. Lucky oh he sailing. Amak tohi adam.
Shuj, Lyle, and Jared, thank you so much. That was really beautiful and exemplifies the kind of thing we want to do here at the Dillon Center. This is about Dillon's music, but it's about the creativity of others. It's about interpretation. It's crossing language barriers, all lines imaginable, to just be unified in music and in song. Thank you so much. This has just been a lovely gathering. We are going to do an actual ribbon cutting. While that's prepared, just thanks to all of you. You know, there are familiar faces, there are local dignitaries, you're all local dignitaries, but I want to point out a few city council members, Lakin, McKee, Arthrell, and Fowler. Thank you for being here and for the work you do on behalf of the city. All of you here, the Bob Dylan Center founding partners and members, all of our supporters, we could not have gotten this far without you as we finally prepare to open the doors after these many years of run-up. We hope Dylan, were he here in town, would approve of how we've gone about this endeavor. But in typical fashion, he is not looking back. He is looking forward. He's thinking about, I would only imagine, tomorrow night's show, painting another painting, writing another song. So he's leaving us to contemplate the work that we have here thus far as it's encapsulated in the archive. And who knows, maybe one day he'll just sort of saunter in and take a look around and see what he thinks. But we're not, fortunately, he has trusted us, all of us, here in Tulsa and afar, part of the Dylan community, to do right by his ever-growing legacy. As I said earlier, we will always be chasing after Dylan. Despite the 100,000 items here, there's something wonderfully elusive at the core that all of us in our own way will try to make meaning from, and I think you'll embark on your own journey once you walk into the center, whether this very afternoon or in the coming days and weeks. I really look forward to hearing your thoughts. Please share with myself and my colleagues. We're so eager to know what you think of the center and hear your own Dylan stories. Thank you all so much for being here this morning and for all your support.